Hi everyone, it's Lizzie, and it has been way too long since I have filmed a book video. Unfortunately, it has just started thunderstorming and raining outside, which usually I love, but when trying to film a video it's not the best background noise. So in this video I'm going to be talking about John Green's latest novel, Turtles All the Way Down. Before I get into actually talking about the novel, I just wanted to talk about books in general. I wanted to start making book videos because I love books so much, and they're a huge part of my life. I grew up reading, I have continued reading, and I consider myself quite an avid reader because I love books so much. I would definitely classify myself as a thinker. I've said before that I am an introvert and I like to get lost in the world of books and the world that books create for me. But I've also found that when it comes to talking about books, I don't really have a voice for that. I can't seem to find the words, and I really don't do them justice when I talk about them. So although I've made a couple of book videos so far, I watch them back, and as much as I like them, I feel like I didn't say everything that I wanted to, and I didn't portray exactly how I felt about them, and it was just really frustrating for me, so I stopped doing them. However, I wanted to get back into making them, and I've made a couple of notes about what I wanted to cover when talking about Turtles All the Way Down, and I hope that I can get my message across a bit more succinctly and something that I'm happier with overall. This will also be a spoiler-free review discussion, so feel free to keep watching if you haven't already read the book. Or if you're looking for spoilers, this isn't the video for you. With this book, it's kind of funny because as much as I was excited for a new John Green novel to come out, I wasn't like making a date for it in my calendar to rush out and buy it sort of thing. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't excited to read it, it was just that I was going through a bit of a reading hiatus, completely unplanned. I can really only say that it was because my brain just felt much too loud and busy and foggy all at once, and I felt like I couldn't really deal with everything that was happening in my own brain, let alone try and concentrate on a book and someone else's words. And I felt like if I was forcing myself to do that, I thought that I wouldn't enjoy the book very much, or not just this book, I mean any books, and it was really disappointing. It wasn't something that I felt like I had control over. Basically felt like I halted all of my reading progress throughout not only my reading challenge, but just what I wanted to be doing was reading, and it felt like it was the one thing I couldn't do. So far this year, I have been reading a lot of YA books. I've also read a couple of fiction books and science fiction. However, the YA genre books have been making up 80 to 90% of my reading material. I have found a couple of gems this year throughout the YA genre, but I've also found ones that have just been a little, not really disappointing as such, but like I haven't hated them, I've still enjoyed them. They just haven't been like wow books. I am going to savor this book, I want to treasure it, I'm going to read it again and again, I need to tell everyone and no one about this at exactly the same time. There's only been a couple of those books this year, which has been a little disappointing overall. They just get a little bit too repetitive. That was not the case with Turtles All the Way Down. It was so refreshing. Once I finally picked it up, I was actually hooked from the first page. And I find this a little bit hard because when I read, the majority of the time that I read is done on my journey to and from work, which is on the train. And the trains can get super crowded and squashy, and people are just talking everywhere, so it can get really hard to concentrate on a book when I'm on the train, and I find that when I've got a really good book I can really block out everything else and just focus on the book. But I had been struggling with that up to the hiatus where I just went, nope, I'm not even going to try anymore because this is going to ruin the end of that book. I will wait until my brain can focus a bit better and I will finish it then. However, with Turtles, there was one line right on the very end of the page, of the first page, and I went, I'm gonna like this book. It just got me. Just to make things a bit more clear, I'm going to read the actual line that was the one that just solidified everything else is going to drown out from now on, and you are going to love this book. But I was beginning to learn that your life is a story told about you, not one that you tell. Of course, you pretend to be the author. You have to. You think, I now choose to go to lunch. when that monotone beep rings from on high at 12:37. But really, the bell decides. You think you're the painter, but you're the canvas. And I feel that that really resonated with me, and just that was the little hook, and I was reeled in from then on. I'm also going to point out the very obvious thing that this is a hardcover. You don't usually get hardcovers, especially not in Australia, from American or European releases. I have to find them and track them down online, but I found it. Day one, release day, was just out, hardcover. Thank you, I appreciate that so much. Aside from the fact that this is my only John Green hardcover now, I do not know Aza Holmes personally. She has OCD, in case you don't know anything about the book, and I do not have OCD, but I feel like the way that John Green wrote Aza and her thoughts and her mindset, I just thought that he got it. John Green has OCD, so he was coming from a place of 100% relatability. Aza's mental illness didn't feel forced or fake. It felt so realistic, and it wasn't romanticized. That was just so refreshing. I found myself empathizing a lot with Aza because I don't have OCD, as I've already said, but I do have anxiety and depression. And I do also have invasive thoughts, which my therapist called them intrusive thoughts, but exactly the same thing. They're not on the same level. Like, Aza's are so incredibly intensified, but I was reading it and I thought, wow, this is something that I don't talk about, but here it is in a book, written so well and so relatably that it just got me. And it's really hard sometimes reading about that in such a public place like a train and just trying to hold it in as you read and just connect with the book so much. I feel like I have to mention the relationships throughout the book, particularly with her best friends Daisy and Michael, and I really appreciated how they were written because they were whole and individual characters themselves. They didn't feel 2D in any way. Aza's relationship with her mum was written beautifully. I feel like I would have appreciated even more from her mum, but because we're seeing everything from Aza's point of view, it makes sense that you don't see more. But what I did see, I appreciated and I liked so much. The character of Davis was very interesting. I enjoyed him so much. I appreciated the intellectual conversations that Davis and Aza had. I felt like they weren't teen angsty and superficial. They were very much... I mean, other deep conversations with teens in other YA novels have happened. I'm not saying this is the very first time, but I really appreciated the way that John Green dealt with their relationship in particular, I guess. Because I feel that John Green wrote mental illness in this novel so well, and that it was so refreshing through the writing and the characters, the way that they all dealt with it, the way that it was portrayed and handled. It was just, overall, I guess it was comforting to me. And I've chosen some of my favourite quotes to share throughout the book that are still spoiler free. To understand this quote, with Aza's OCD and her invasive thoughts, she goes into something called a thought spiral. And if you have dealt with these sort of things, I think you just get it. And that might be why I've enjoyed this. But if not, I also think that it's very descriptive as to exactly what a thought spiral is. The thing about a spiral is, if you follow it inward, it never actually ends. It just keeps tightening infinitely. And to add to that quote, I feel like as soon as you are in a spiral, you just keep getting sucked down further, and it's so hard to get out of, which is why it just keeps tightening infinitely. Most of these quotes are from Aza's conversation with her therapist, if not just her own thoughts. There is another quote where her therapist actually is quoting Virginia Woolf. English, which can express the thoughts of Hamlet and the tragedy of Lear, has no words for the shiver and the headache. The merest schoolgirl, when she falls in love, has Shakespeare or Keats to speak her mind for her. But let a sufferer try to describe a pain in his head to a doctor, and language at once runs dry. They then go on to discuss about how there are blanket terms like chronic pain and crazy, which don't really describe or cover the stresses and terror that are involved with mental illness, for example. And I just found that a good quote that I then looked up and have saved it because, yeah. So this one is a quote from her therapist as they are talking about identity and the self. You're right that self isn't simple, Aza. Maybe it's not even singular. Self is a plurality, but pluralities can also be integrated, right? Think of a rainbow. It's one arc of light, but also 7 differently coloured arcs of light. I get that because the self is, yes, you are made up of lots and lots of things, but at the core of it, who are you? Who am I? What makes up me? Do I have a single unsullied self inside of me somewhere? Or am I just all of this together? Can I not be one or the other? Or am I both? The struggle with identity throughout this book is incredible, and the way that I connected with that was something that I think really stood out for me with this novel. So this is another one with her therapist. But what I want to know is there a you independent of circumstances? Is there a way deep down me who is an actual real person? The same person if she has money or not, the same person if she has a boyfriend or not, the same if she goes to this school or that school, or am I only a set of circumstances? And while I've read a few comments and reviews of people saying that they kind of had existential crises while reading this book, you can kind of see why from those quotes, I feel, but I didn't exactly. But I feel like it's because I was kind of already in this place that Aza is in or travelled to throughout this book, and the whole self and identity and the thought spirals and everything, it was just so relatable, which is why I appreciated just the entire story arc of this book. I kind of wish it had been longer because I wanted to stay there in that instant, which is also something Aza and Davis talk about. I guess what I have kind of said throughout this video a few times, and maybe not quite so succinctly as I wanted, was that I felt that this book just got me. I connected with this book, I connected with the characters, and I just so appreciated the way that it's been written and the story told throughout. Not only the story, but the struggles and the relationships told throughout. It's definitely a book that I will reread, most likely reread quite soon, because I don't feel like I'm out of this book hiatus thing that I'm going through. I'm still struggling to get into other books because my mind just feels so full already. But maybe within this book were so many of my thoughts already that were in my head that they kind of overlapped, and there was the connection. That is all I have to say about Turtles All the Way Down. I completely loved this book. I don't know how else I can express. I wish I had the brain capacity or the ability to talk about books more expressively than I already have. No, I haven't already. Than I've done. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you should take a tally of how many times I've said appreciated in this video, but I just also need to make a point about how I appreciated the ending. I won't give anything away about the ending, but it was a good one. I feel like if I say too much more about it, it will give it away, and I definitely don't want to spoil the ending for any of you who haven't read it already. But if you haven't read this book already, I recommend you do if you want to read something about mental illness that is an accurate portrayal. I feel like you can either relate to it because you're struggling with some form of mental illness yourself, whether it is OCD or not, or if you don't have a mental illness, maybe you know someone who does, or you just want to learn a bit more about it so that you can just have a better understanding overall, I guess. Anyway, this has been my discussion on Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and you can click subscribe if you want to. I will be trying to make an effort to make some more book videos because I read so many. Even this year where it's been a bit slower, I have still almost reached my goal on Goodreads. And I write little reviews there, but I want to have more of a discussion and talk about them more because I want to get better at it, and I feel this is the best way to do it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another video. Bye! P.S. The one spoiler I will give about this book is that there are no turtles featured in this book. I know that's a little bit disappointing, but you should probably maybe know that just in case.